Pretend you're sick and run away, whispered the flight attendant as she boarded the plane. The whisper on the plane. I was flying to Miami with my son and daughter-in-law when a flight attendant leaned close and whispered, "Pretend you're sick and get off the plane." At first I thought she was joking, but then she pleaded, her voice trembling, "Please, I beg you." 20 minutes earlier I had been sitting in my study, the afternoon sun slanting through the window, illuminating dust motes that floated in the air, smelling faintly of old paper and lemon polish. I'd been grading history papers, ones I'd kept for 15 years. Maybe it was nostalgia, or maybe I just couldn't let go of the part of me that used to matter. The house creaked around me in its usual way, a familiar symphony of aging wood and silence. I had almost forgotten that I wasn't alone anymore. The front door opened downstairs. Footsteps climbed the stairs. Christopher and Edith had lived with me for 8 months, but they moved through my house like ghosts, barely speaking, never connecting. We exchanged polite nods, small talk, and nothing more. When they appeared at my door that afternoon, something in their posture felt off. Edith came in first, smiling that kind of sweet smile that always precedes bad news. Christopher stood behind her, hands shoved deep into his pockets, eyes darting anywhere but at me. "Francis." "We need to talk," Edith began. I took off my glasses slowly, a small shield I'd perfected after decades of dealing with difficult students. "About what?" I asked. Christopher shifted uneasily. "We've been thinking about family, how we should spend more time together." "Quality time," Edith added brightly, perching on the arm of my reading chair as if she owned it. "Before life gets too busy," my instincts stirred. They had avoided me for months. Why this sudden interest now? "Before what exactly?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Edith just waved her hand. "Oh, you know how it is. Christopher, tell him about Miami." My son finally looked at me. There was desperation behind his forced enthusiasm. "Miami, Dad. Remember when we went there when I was 12? Let's recreate that trip. A full week together, our treat." I studied his face. "You hated that trip. You said it was boring." He hesitated. "I was a kid. I see things differently now." The silence stretched between us. My son, the boy who used to bring me dandelions and call me his hero, now looked like a stranger taking instructions from someone else. "Next week," Edith said quickly. "Everything's already arranged. We just need your yes." That evening she offered to cook dinner. Edith never cooked. I sat at the table while she moved around my kitchen with an unsettling familiarity, opening drawers and cabinets, using my dishes like they were hers. Christopher poured wine, his hands trembling slightly when I asked how long they'd been planning the trip. He smiled nervously. "We wanted it to be a surprise. A good surprise." Then Edith set the plate in front of me and said casually, "Francis, your life insurance policy is quite substantial. 500,000, right? Very responsible of you." My fork froze midair. "How do you know that?" "Christopher mentioned it," she replied lightly, cutting her food into perfect uniform pieces. I looked at my son. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The air turned heavy. Something in me shifted. "I haven't been sleeping well," I said, testing them. "My heart's been acting up lately. Feels strange sometimes." Christopher's eyes flickered with something, hope maybe, before he caught himself. "You should see a doctor," Edith cut in smoothly. "You're fine, Francis. Probably just stress." They exchanged a quick look, silent but telling. My chest tightened. Not from fear, but realization. Later that night, when they were asleep, I found printed flight confirmations on the table. Tickets for Miami. My ticket, too. They had already booked everything, certain I would say yes. I sat alone in my study until midnight, holding an old photograph of Christopher as a boy, grinning with missing teeth, his arms wrapped around my neck. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man I no longer recognized. 40 years of teaching history had taught me one thing. People always leave evidence. Motives reveal themselves when you look at the whole picture. The sudden generosity, the insurance talk, the planned trip. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd go to Miami, but on my own terms. Christopher knocked on my door early the next day. "So, Dad, Miami, what do you say?" "I'll go," I told him. Relief washed over his face, followed by a flicker of something darker. Satisfaction. Edith's approving nod behind him sealed it. I packed methodically that morning. Clothes, toiletries, and my medication. But instead of packing the pills in my checked bag, I slipped them into my carry-on. A small precaution. Years of teaching had taught me that survival often depended on such small acts. When we left, Christopher's car smelled faintly of coffee and air freshener. I noticed the empty trunk, though he claimed it was full, so I held my suitcase on my lap. The drive to Orlando International Airport was quiet. Christopher's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Edith stared out the window, typing on her phone, then deleting messages almost immediately. "Excited about Miami, Dad?" Christopher asked, his voice cracking. "Should I be?" I replied, he forced a laugh. "Of course, family time, beaches, relaxation." The silence returned, heavier than before. At the airport, Christopher parked in short-term parking, odd for a week-long trip. Another inconsistency. At security, Edith insisted I go first. I noticed how she watched the screen closely as my bag went through the scanner, only relaxing once it cleared. When it came time to board, they went ahead with priority boarding while my ticket placed me in Zone 3. They didn't even glance back. I finally boarded, walking down the narrow aisle when a flight attendant stopped me. Her name tag read Mildred. She smiled politely, then leaned in close. "Pretend you're sick and leave the plane." I froze. "Excuse me?" She moved away quickly, pretending to rearrange luggage, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Moments later, she returned, her expression cracking. "Sir," she whispered, "I'm begging you. You need to get off this plane now." Her eyes were full of terror, raw, unmistakable fear. Christopher's voice called from a few rows ahead, sharp and impatient. "Dad, everything okay?" I acted on instinct. My hand flew to my chest. "My heart," I gasped, stumbling. Within seconds, the crew surrounded me, voices overlapping. "Sir, can you breathe? Stay with us." As they lifted me into a wheelchair, I caught one last look at Christopher and Edith. What I saw froze me. Disappointment. Not fear, not concern, just cold, bitter disappointment. As they wheeled me off the plane, I heard Edith hiss, "This ruins everything." Christopher's quiet reply, "Not here. Not now." Back in the terminal, I sat in the airport medical room, heart pounding. A paramedic said I was fine, probably anxiety, and left me alone. Outside the window, I watched their plane taxi toward the runway. My phone buzzed. A text from Christopher. "Dad, hope you feel better. We'll call when we land." I turned the phone off. Moments later, Mildred appeared again, still pale, still shaken. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Somewhere private." In a small fluorescent-lit medical room, she locked the door and looked me in the eye. "I need to show you something. What I'm about to do could cost me my job." She pulled out her phone, opened a video, and pressed play. The footage showed the inside of an airport restroom, just ceiling tiles and echoing voices. I recognized the voice instantly. Edith's. "The pills will dissolve quickly in his drink. He won't taste anything. Altitude makes heart attacks more believable. Emergency at 30,000 feet. Response is limited, investigations harder." A pause. 500,000. Christopher's nervous but committed. Then laughter. Cold and clear. I stared at the screen. My daughter-in-law was calmly discussing my murder like a business deal. "Who was she talking to?" I asked. "I don't know," Mildred said softly. "But she mentioned that the plan was already in motion." Christopher was on board. "Why help me?" I asked. "You don't even know me." She hesitated, then said, 3 years ago my father died. My cousin convinced him to change his will, then he fell down the stairs. They called it an accident. I couldn't prove otherwise. When I heard your daughter-in-law, I couldn't stay silent again. Her voice hardened. "Stop them." I took her contact information, writing neatly in my small notebook, the same one I used to grade papers. Even in crisis, I documented everything. When I finally left the airport, the taxi ride home passed in silence. The driver tried to make small talk. "Missed your flight?" "No," I said quietly, staring out the window. "I caught something more important." At home, the house felt different, tainted. My walls had heard plans for my death. My dining table had been the stage for betrayal. I set my carry-on by the stairs and went straight to my study, where this all began. The filing cabinet held decades of my life. Insurance policies, bank statements, legal documents, property deeds. I spread them across the dining table, arranging each paper into neat chronological stacks. Years of teaching had trained me for this, methodical, precise, systematic. Now I was applying that same discipline to my own survival. Hours passed. The sunlight dimmed. shadows stretching across the walls until the house was swallowed by darkness. I turned on the lamp, slipped on my reading glasses, and examined each document under steady light, searching for inconsistencies, proof that what Mildred had warned me about was true. I found it. A life insurance beneficiary form dated 6 months ago, one I never signed. My niece in Atlanta, the rightful heir, had been replaced by Christopher Wilson, my own son. The signature attempted to mimic my handwriting, but the details betrayed the forgery. The F in Francis was too elaborate. I'd never written it that way in my life. I photographed the document immediately. Evidence preservation. Lesson 1. The deeper I dug, the darker it became. Bank statements showed unauthorized transfers, $38,000 siphoned in small increments over 6 months. Just enough to avoid suspicion. Then came a forged power of attorney granting Christopher financial control over my assets. And medical records, entire files I'd never seen, describing symptoms of cognitive decline, memory loss, confusion. They were building a false history of my deterioration, a carefully crafted narrative of an aging man losing his grip on reality. It was all groundwork, legal, financial, medical, laying the foundation for my murder to appear natural. I sat back in my chair. The papers spread before me like evidence from one of the history lessons I used to teach. They planned this for months, I said aloud to the empty room, a teacher lecturing ghosts. They lived in my house, ate my food, and plotted my death. I stared at the forged power of attorney in my hands. This wasn't impulsive. It was strategic, cold, sophisticated. They'd researched, prepared, and executed with precision. I couldn't bring myself to clean the table. Those papers were more than evidence. They were the physical proof of betrayal. The visible remains of trust turned into strategy against me. As midnight approached, I sat in my reading chair, the house silent except for the ticking of the old wall clock. My son was in Miami now, probably reassuring Edith that they'd find another opportunity. Another way, they didn't know I had the recording. They didn't know I'd found their forged documents. They didn't know their prey had become aware of the hunters. The shock had burned away. What remained was cold clarity. They hadn't just tried to kill me. They'd been stealing my life piece by piece. Now it was time to take it back. 3 days passed. I avoided Christopher and Edith's concerned questions with vague mentions of stomach trouble from the airport incident. In reality, I was busy researching attorneys, making discreet calls, and organizing evidence into color-coded folders stacked neatly on my desk. At precisely 2 p.m., Nicholas Clark arrived. Mid-50s, gray threading through his dark hair, an expensive briefcase hinting at success. A state law specialist with 20 years of experience. His handshake was firm, his gaze sharp and assessing. "Mr. Wilson," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "Thank you for trusting me with this. Walk me through what you've found." I handed him the first folder, the one marked with a blue tab for financial documents. Nicholas began reading. His professional calm held through the first few pages, but as the scope of what I'd uncovered became clear, his expression hardened. Forged signatures, altered beneficiaries, fraudulent power of attorney. He flipped through the pages quickly now, his pen racing across the notepad. "When did you last review these documents personally?" he asked. 5 years ago, I said. "When I retired from teaching." "And you never authorized a beneficiary change?" "Never," I said firmly. "That policy was meant for my niece in Atlanta. She put herself through nursing school. I wanted her to have something." Nicholas nodded, jotting notes with crisp precision. "And your daughter-in-law, Edith Wilson, what's her professional background?" "Medical administrator. Silver Palms Medical Center." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "So she'd have access to patient records, templates, and physician's signature stamps. She created your medical history, fabricated symptoms of mental decline to make you appear incompetent." I almost smiled at the irony. While I was teaching night classes on civil rights history, they were writing me off as mentally unfit. Nicholas opened his laptop and began running forensic software on my bank records. Red flags appeared immediately. Unauthorized transfers, signature mismatches, patterns of fraud. 38,000 over 6 months, he said quietly. Small at first, then larger. Classic embezzlement. I reached into my desk and handed him Christopher's laptop. He left this in his room. I set it up for him years ago. He never changed the passwords. Nicholas gave me a look that balanced professional caution with understanding. Then he connected an external drive and began recovering deleted data. Within minutes, damning emails appeared on the screen. Conversations between Christopher and a so-called medical consultant. Discussions of substances that could cause heart failure. Untraceable in autopsies, especially at high altitude. Negotiations over price $10,000. A meeting arranged in a parking garage downtown. Nicholas's jaw tightened. "This is a murder contract," he said. "Your son negotiated your death like a business deal." The words barely touched me. I had already moved past pain. "Keep reading," I said. He found a draft of a new will on Christopher's desktop. Every asset left to Christopher and Edith. My forged signature at the bottom, dated 2 weeks ago. "They plan to find it after your death," Nicholas said grimly. He removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes, and looked at me without pretense. "Francis, may I call you Francis?" I nodded. "This isn't just estate fraud. It's conspiracy to commit murder, forgery, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. We need to decide, do we bring in the police now or build an ironclad case first?" My phone buzzed between us. A text from Christopher. "Dad, where are you? We need to talk about your health." Nicholas glanced from the phone to me. The message said everything. The manipulation hadn't stopped. It was still active, still ongoing. "Build the case first," I said. "Make it undeniable. Then we strike." Nicholas studied me for a moment, respect softening his expression. "You've thought this through." "I taught strategy for 40 years," I said. "Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, Napoleon, I learned from the best." "Know your enemy. Choose your battlefield." He gave a faint, grim smile. "When I start filing orders and freezing accounts, they'll know." "Good," I said quietly. Panic makes people sloppy. For the next hour, we planned. Calls to document examiners, forensic accountants, and private investigators. Digital backups, encrypted cloud storage, multiple evidence packets. One for the police, one for civil court, and one for me to keep off-site in a safety deposit box. As evening settled in, Nicholas packed his briefcase and paused at the door. "When this is over," he said, "what do you want, justice or revenge?" I didn't hesitate. "I want them to understand what they've done. I want consequences that last." He nodded once. "Then don't change anything yet. Act normal. I'll handle the rest." After he left, I sat in the dim light of my study. My phone buzzed again. "Christopher, Dad, dinner tonight. We need to talk about your future." I stared at the message, then typed my reply. "Yes, we need to talk about the future." The double meaning was mine. Alone. A week passed. 7 days of performance of feigned confusion and harmless small talk while dismantling their plot piece by piece. I sat at the breakfast table, coffee cooling in front of me, watching Christopher and Edith through the doorway. They didn't know that while I'd asked innocent questions about pills and misplaced glasses, I'd been installing 12 high-definition cameras throughout the house for my safety. I'd told them. They'd agreed enthusiastically. "For your safety, Dad," Christopher said. "That's really smart." They never noticed the specifications, never realized the cameras recorded audio, never suspected every smirk, every whispered conversation. Every incriminating word was being uploaded to encrypted cloud storage. I'd even placed an audio recorder in the heating vent above the dining room, the same trick I used decades ago to catch students cheating. Old habits, new purpose, the recordings were damning. "The plane was supposed to work," Edith hissed 2 nights ago. "Now we're back to square one." "You said the pills were undetectable," Christopher snapped. "I said a lot of things. Now we go with Plan B, the incompetency route." "What if he resists?" "He won't. Look at him lately. He's already halfway there." I'd listened to it all, emotionless, documenting every word. But my most dangerous work happened after midnight. When Christopher slept, I entered his room, copied files, and extracted evidence onto an external drive hidden in my study. Once I barely escaped. Progress bar at 88% when footsteps echoed in the hallway. I slipped through the connecting bathroom just in time, heart pounding but hand steady. Nicholas and I reviewed the files the next day. Email chains, poison research, spreadsheets calculating my net worth and potential insurance payouts. "This isn't impulsive," Nicholas said. "It's premeditated, meticulous." "Good," I replied. "It proves intent." He'd already begun filing protective orders and freezing accounts. timing notification so the blocks wouldn't be discovered until it was too late. When they try to access your money, they'll realize something's wrong, Nicholas said. And when they panic, I replied, we'll be ready. Yesterday, I finalized my new will. Florence Harris, the notary, was thorough to the point of redundancy. Video statement, fingerprints, witnesses, capacity assessment. Your son won't inherit? She asked gently. My son plotted to murder me for inheritance, I said, my voice calm. He'll get exactly what he deserves, nothing. Everything goes to the Educational Futures Foundation. Scholarships for students who actually value learning. She nodded solemnly. I've seen this before, she said quietly. Family treating elders like obstacles. Now sitting at my breakfast table this morning, I stared down at the pills Edith offered with her usual sugary tone. The blue ones. Francis. For your heart. Here, let me help. I smiled faintly, swallowing them while the camera above captured every smug flicker of satisfaction on her face. I don't know what I'd do without you both, I said warmly. Upstairs, every word uploaded to the cloud. That evening, in a parking garage, Nicholas handed me a burner phone. If they escalate, he said, call this number. Police are briefed. They'll respond immediately. I hoped I wouldn't need it, but I knew I might. Late that night, reviewing the camera footage, I heard Edith again. Calm, clinical, cruel. We need a doctor to declare him incompetent. Once we have medical control, we control everything. His money, healthcare, and the end of his life. Christopher nodded, face blank. No guilt, no hesitation, my son was gone. In his place stood a stranger. Calculating, cold, unrecognizable. I closed the laptop and dialed Nicholas. They're accelerating, I said. They're pushing for an incompetency evaluation. His answer was immediate. Then it's time. We trigger the account freeze now. Agreed, Nicholas said. I'll activate everything tomorrow morning. Be ready for how they react. After hanging up, I opened my old teaching journal. Leather-bound, its pages filled with decades of classroom notes and reflections. I began to write carefully, deliberately. Lesson for today. Sun Tzu was right. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. But sometimes you must let them destroy themselves. Tomorrow they'll learn what happens when you underestimate the teacher. I closed the journal and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the blinds and the familiar chime of Christopher's computer upstairs, an incoming email. I sat at the breakfast table, newspaper spread before me like a prop, listening closely to the sounds of the house I'd known for 40 years. Then came the rapid footsteps, the sharp edge of Christopher's voice. Edith, get up here now. I sipped my coffee slowly, counting to 60 in my head. Old teacher's habit. Wait before reacting, let the situation unfold. Upstairs, muffled voices overlapped, urgent, anxious. Though the words were indistinct, the tone was unmistakable. Panic. At 60, I finally called up the stairs, calm and casual. Everything all right? A pause, then Christopher's forced calm reply. Fine, Dad, just work stuff. The lie hung heavy in the air. I went back to my paper, pretending to read, quietly waiting. Throughout the morning, Christopher tried to access the accounts from his home office. I stood in the hallway unnoticed, my phone recording as the error messages multiplied across his screen. Access denied. Account locked. Please visit your branch in person. His fingers trembled on the keyboard, trying password after password. Edith hovered behind him, her jaw tight. Call the bank, she ordered. He did. I listened as his voice grew increasingly strained, trying to justify his authority over my accounts. The response must have been firm because when he hung up, his face had gone pale. They said the account holder has to appear in person, he muttered. All third-party authorizations are suspended, pending fraud investigation. For lunch, I made sandwiches. A simple gesture, one they found too strange to comment on. Absorbed as they were in their crisis, they ate mechanically, thumbs flying across their phones, texting people I couldn't identify. Lawyers, perhaps, or their medical consultant. Dinner, I decided, deserved something special. I spent the afternoon preparing a pot roast, the kind I'd perfected years ago, muscle memory from decades of cooking for one after retirement. The meal felt symbolic, the routine they'd tried to erase, reclaimed. When they came downstairs that evening, whispering in the hallway, I called them to the table. Strange thing happened today, I said casually as I cut my meat. The bank called about suspicious activity on my accounts. Apparently someone's been making unauthorized transfers. I looked up, meeting both of their eyes. I asked them to investigate thoroughly. Christopher nearly choked on his water. Edith's fork paused midair, trembling before she forced herself to keep eating. Dad, Christopher began. About that, if you were just helping me manage the money like you said, I interrupted gently. The bank will sort it out. Unless, I let the silence stretch. There's something you'd like to tell me? Edith's composure cracked. Her voice came out sharp, the practiced professional tone slipping away. Francis, you're clearly confused about your finances. This is exactly why you need our help, why you need oversight. Oversight? I repeated as though testing the word. Interesting choice. Legal oversight? Medical oversight, she snapped, regaining her control. For your own protection. Protection? I asked softly. From what? From whom? The silence that followed was answer enough. My phone rang. Right on schedule, Nicholas, I answered with a neutral tone. Oh, the bank, yes. I'll come by tomorrow. Investigation, of course. Whatever's needed to protect my accounts. As I spoke, I watched their faces lose color. Unauthorized access is a serious matter, I added. I'm glad they're taking it seriously. After dinner, Christopher lingered as I washed the dishes. Dad, about tomorrow, he said hesitantly. Maybe I should go with you, to help explain the account management we've been doing. I smiled gently, drying a plate with deliberate care. That's thoughtful, but I can handle my own finances. I'm not incompetent yet. The word incompetent landed like a thunderclap. Christopher froze, searching my face for meaning. Had I emphasized it? Did I know how much? I turned back to the dishes, leaving him suspended in uncertainty. That night I lay in bed, phone on the nightstand, streaming the security feed. Downstairs, Christopher and Edith sat in the living room, arguing. This is your fault, Edith hissed. Your sloppy forgeries. Your weak stomach for the original plan. The power of attorney was perfect, Christopher shot back. Obviously not, since we're locked out of everything. She stood, pacing. We moved to Plan B immediately, incompetency evaluation. I know people at Silver Palms who owe me favors. We'll get him declared unfit, become his guardians, control everything, even the investigation. What doctor would go along with that? Not cooperate, interpret favorably, she corrected coldly. I'll arrange it tomorrow. I recorded it all. Time-stamped, archived, evidence piling up like compound interest, and slow, steady, inevitable. The next morning brought a phone call. Mr. Wilson? A pleasant voice. This is Dr. Morrison, your family physician. I'd like to schedule a routine cognitive assessment today at 2 p.m. Interesting, since I didn't have a family physician. Of course, I said warmly. I appreciate the attention. After hanging up, I called Nicholas immediately. They're moving, I said. Fake medical evaluation to declare incompetency. Dr. Morrison, supposedly my physician. A pause as he checked something. No doctor by that name licensed in Florida, he said grimly. It's fake. So they're using a false doctor to declare me incompetent. Fraud on top of everything else. Keep the appointment, Nicholas instructed. Record everything. I've arranged an independent psychiatric evaluation tomorrow morning. Dr. Patricia Chen. 30 years of experience, impeccable credentials. Their fake diagnosis versus a legitimate one. We'll destroy them in court. That afternoon, I drove to the listed address, a generic office building with multiple practices. I checked the directory. No Dr. Morrison. The office number led to a small suite with temporary paper signage taped to the door. I sat in the car, phone recording discreetly in my pocket. Nicholas had texted, "Police on standby if threatened." I replied, "Everything ready. Let's see how far they'll go." For 40 years, I'd taught students how to separate truth from manipulation, evidence from assumption, reality from performance. Today, I demonstrated in real time. Christopher and Edith thought they'd designed a test I couldn't pass. They had no idea I'd been preparing my entire career for this exam. The next morning, I sat in Dr. Chen's office. The air smelled faintly of lavender and leather. Her questions were sharp and professional. Pattern puzzles, memory recall, logic sequencing. I answered each with calm precision. When she finished, she set her pen down. Fully competent, she said firmly. No cognitive decline, strong analytical reasoning, no signs of paranoia or delusion. Honestly, Mr. Wilson, your clarity is remarkable for your age. I thanked her, took the documentation, and left with quiet satisfaction. The fake Dr. Morrison appointment had gone exactly as I'd expected. A shabby office, a man with no credentials asking leading questions meant to produce a pre-written conclusion of incompetence. I'd recorded it all. Now I had both sides, the fraud and the truth. But as I pulled into my driveway, the satisfaction faded. Christopher's car blocked the entrance. He stood waiting on the porch, an envelope in hand. His face set in grim determination. It reminded me of students who'd been caught cheating, hoping one last bluff might save them. He approached the car as I parked, thrusting the envelope toward me. His hands trembled slightly. "Dad," he said, "this is for your own good. You're not well. We need to protect you." I took the papers, reading each word carefully. Petition for guardianship. Due to incapacity. The accusations were detailed. Meticulously fabricated paranoid delusions about family, progressive memory loss, financial mismanagement, danger to self, sworn statements, falsified medical reports, even fake incident logs. I looked up from the pages, meeting my son's eyes. "Whose safety, Christopher?" I asked quietly. "Mine or yours?" I asked. He didn't answer, just fled to his car and drove off. Nicholas arrived within an hour after my call. We spread the court documents across my dining room table, the same table where I had first organized evidence months ago. His professional calm cracked as he read. "They're claiming you're incompetent," he said finally, after attempted murder failed. He flipped through the pages, shaking his head. The audacity of this, these witness statements, these medical reports. "Desperation breeds boldness," I replied. "Read the witness list." Mrs. Patterson from next door claimed she'd seen me wandering the yard in pajamas at midnight. Tom Chen from book club reported signs of confusion during discussions. And Dr. Sarah Williams from Silver Palms Medical had apparently provided a detailed psychiatric evaluation diagnosing me with progressive dementia. "You've never even met Dr. Williams," Nicholas said. "Never," I confirmed. "But her credentials are real. Edith must have arranged this through her medical contacts." I pointed to another statement. "And these neighbors, I need to talk to them." That evening, I went door to door, teaching journal in hand. Most neighbors were embarrassed, ashamed. Mrs. Patterson's voice trembled as she said, "Christopher told me it was just to help with your care, that you'd approved it. I didn't realize it was for court." "What exactly did you see, Margaret?" I asked gently. "You were outside at night by the bushes, in your pajamas." I was checking the security cameras I'd installed. At 11 p.m., not midnight. In shorts and a t-shirt, not pajamas. My tone stayed calm, the way a teacher comforts a nervous student. "Christopher showed you what he wanted you to see." She broke down crying and promised to recant. 2 other neighbors gave similar stories, innocent moments twisted by manipulation. But 3 refused to speak to me. I learned later that Christopher had paid them. 500 here, 300 there. Small sums for struggling people. Enough to buy false testimony. 2 weeks later, the preliminary hearing arrived. I sat beside Nicholas, posture straight, taking notes. Every inch the picture of competence. Across the aisle, Christopher and Edith sat with their attorney, polished and confident. I wondered where they'd found the money for someone that expensive. More debt, no doubt. Digging deeper. Judge Thompson reviewed both sides with visible skepticism. "Court-appointed psychiatric evaluation," he ordered. "Dr. Patricia Chen will conduct the assessment." Nicholas and I exchanged a look. She had already evaluated me months ago and declared me fully competent. The trap was closing. After the hearing, Nicholas urged action. "We should file criminal charges now. Attempted murder, fraud, forgery. We can end this," I shook my head. "If we move now, they'll know how much we have. They'll dig in or run. Let them think they're winning. Let them commit a few more crimes trying to prove it. Then we end it completely." "That's risky," he warned. "I taught for 40 years, James. Students reveal the most when they think they're succeeding. Christopher and Edith believe their plan might work. Let them believe it a little longer." He disagreed, but respected my decision. A good lawyer honors the client's choice even when it's the harder one. That evening, I went to the bank and requested a full audit of all accounts for the past year. The manager, now sympathetic, handed me a thick file. I spent hours with a highlighter, tracing every unauthorized withdrawal, watching a timeline of theft come to life. Weeks passed. Christopher grew erratic as his gambling debts piled up. $75,000 owed to bookies, casinos, and online betting. Nicholas's investigation uncovered threatening messages and deleted emails. The pattern was clear. Debt had driven him to desperation months before the murder plot began. Then one night, Nicholas called. Court-appointed evaluation scheduled. Dr. Chen next week. And Christopher's gambling is worse than we thought. Bookmakers don't accept apologies. I added it all to my case files, each folder labeled and cross-referenced. Financial fraud, forgery, attempted murder, false medical claims, witness tampering. My study wall looked like a detective's board from a movie. Photos, strings, timelines, all leading back to my son and his wife. For 40 years, I taught that truth demands patience. Evidence must be overwhelming. Presentation must be irrefutable. Christopher and Edith had given me months to build this case while thinking they were winning. Now they were about to learn the final lesson. The teacher always knows more than the students realize. Class was almost over. Time for the final exam. I had laid out my courtroom clothes the night before. Pressed suit, conservative tie, polished shoes. I looked like a teacher preparing for an important lecture. The phone rang. "Nicholas," I said. "Final witness prep tomorrow morning?" "Then we're ready." "I'll be there," I confirmed. After hanging up, I looked around my quiet house. For the first time in months, I felt peaceful. Not happy. Peace and happiness are different things, but calm. Certain. Justice delayed is not justice denied. From my desk drawer, I took out the old photo of young Christopher, the one I'd put away weeks earlier. I studied it one last time. The innocent child who had grown into a guilty man. On the back I wrote, "I gave you everything. You chose this path. I choose justice." I sealed the photo in an envelope and addressed it to Christopher for delivery after the trial. It wasn't cruel, just honest. My final communication with my son. That night, I went to bed and slept soundly for the first time in months. Preparation complete. Tomorrow, consequences would arrive. The morning of the trial dawned with a quiet sunrise over Orlando. I woke early and dressed carefully in the suit I'd prepared. The tie was knotted precisely, a motion ingrained from 40 years of professional life. My shoes shone with mirror polish. Breakfast was simple, coffee and toast. Routine mattered today. There was nothing left to review. Evidence memorized, testimony rehearsed. I was ready. Nicholas picked me up at 8. We drove to the courthouse in comfortable silence. Two professionals prepared for performance. I watched the morning traffic. Ordinary people beginning ordinary days. Mine would be anything but ordinary, yet it was necessary. Justice requires witnesses. Justice requires record. Justice requires truth. The courtroom filled quickly. Reporters packed the back rows. The case had drawn attention. Christopher and Edith sat beside their attorney, diminished, defeated before the verdict was even spoken. I took my seat behind the prosecution table, posture straight, hands steady. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The prosecutor began, voice steady and sure. "The evidence will show that the defendants conspired to murder Francis Wilson for insurance money. They researched methods, acquired substances, forged documents, and manipulated medical systems. Only the alert actions of a flight attendant prevented this murder. The defense countered weakly, claims of family misunderstandings and poor communication. But the jury's focus stayed on the prosecution. The evidence was systematic, devastating. When Mildred's video played on the courtroom screens, her recorded voice filled the room. Edith's voice was unmistakable. Pills in his drink. Heart attack at altitude. 500,000. Christopher flinched. Edith stared forward, jaw locked. Mildred took the stand, nervous at first, then steady. "I recorded it because I needed proof," she said. The defense tried to undermine her. "Isn't it true you were in financial distress?" "I was," she replied. "But I didn't misinterpret murder." Her honesty cut through the courtroom air. A forensic examiner confirmed the forged signatures. Bank officials testified about $38,000 in unauthorized transfers. Dr. Patricia Chen dismantled the defense's claim of my incompetence. Every piece fit perfectly. The case was airtight. Then I took the stand. After the oath, I settled into the witness chair. 40 years of teaching had trained me for this. Public speaking, attention control, clear communication. When did you first suspect something was wrong? The prosecutor asked. The invitation to Miami, I said. Their sudden attention after months of distance. Small details that pattern recognition tells you not to ignore. And what did you do? What I taught my students to do. Gather evidence, document everything, verify sources. Build a case before drawing conclusions. I applied academic rigor to my own survival. The defense's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. My credibility stood unshaken. The facts were too strong. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman rose. Count 1, conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. Count 2, fraud, guilty. Count 3, forgery, guilty. Each word hit like a hammer. Edith's composure cracked, one tear quickly wiped away. Christopher dropped his head into his hands. During the sentencing phase, the judge asked if I wished to make a victim impact statement. I stood and faced them. You lived in my home. I provided for you. I trusted you. You responded by plotting my death. I don't hate you. I pity you. You destroyed your lives for money you'll never have. That's justice enough. Then I sat. The judge nodded slightly, acknowledging the restraint. Christopher received 3 years probation with strict conditions. Edith received 5. Her professional deception made it worse. They were ordered to repay the $38,000 and pay $50,000 in punitive damages. All inheritance rights revoked. Criminal records permanent. This case, the judge said, represents a calculated betrayal of family trust. Your victim's mercy is more than you deserve. Court adjourned. Outside, the media swarmed the courthouse steps. I gave a brief statement. Justice has been served. I hope this reminds families that trust is sacred and betrayal carries consequences. Then I declined further questions. As I walked toward the parking garage, I saw Christopher leaving through a side door, avoiding cameras. Our eyes met briefly. He looked away first. I felt nothing. Not anger, not triumph, just completion. Nicholas drove me home. We didn't speak until we pulled into my driveway. He reached out his hand. You did good, Francis. We did, I said. Thank you. Inside, the house was mine again. Legally, physically, emotionally. I went to my study. The timeline board still hung on the wall, filled with photos and documents. Slowly, methodically, I began taking it down. Each piece filed away. The conspiracy was over. Justice had been served. I packed everything into a banker's box, labeled it Christopher, case closed, August 2025. Then I stored it in the closet. Not forgotten, but archived. At my desk, I opened my laptop and wrote an email to the local high school principal. I'm a retired history teacher with 40 years experience. I'd like to volunteer 2 afternoons a week, no pay required. I have lessons worth sharing. Students should know that knowledge protects, that documentation matters, and that justice, though slow, comes to those patient enough to pursue it properly. I hit send, looking around my study. I saw the books I'd collected, the papers I'd graded, the life I'd built, still intact, despite everything. A small, genuine smile found its way to my face. Not happiness, not yet, but freedom. Justice delivered. Conscience clear, the future unwritten. Tomorrow I would begin again. The past was archived where it belonged. Today I was simply a teacher again, with stories to tell and lessons to share, and that finally was enough.